yeah,
Sorry, we
and
need to press the record button.
and that's all good.
Okay.
As Elaine shared, I currently run a company called Design Big, and we're primarily helping startups hire early stage designers. And so every day I get to work with designers who want to be working at startups, as well as working with founders that are hiring early stage designers and helping them find the right person for their team. And so through that experience, as well as my own experience as a designer, working in startups and having worked at both in freelance and in agency as well, I've had a chance to kind of sit on different sides of the table, whether it's from the perspective of someone that's hiring a designer, from the perspective of a designer that's applying for jobs. And yeah, I'm happy to share as much of that experience as I can. And yeah, I'm excited for everyone that's here and joined us today.
Okay, great. How about Eric?
Hi, so Elaine already mentioned my background a little bit. I'm an immigrant from India here in Canada, based in Vancouver. Um, I did my education here, and then one thing led to another. I started pursuing the CAT degree program at SFU. There's a lot of things that happened before that, which we'll probably touch on later. But yeah, eventually found UX through teaching UX when I didn't know much about UX, surprisingly. So it was like teaching and learning at the same time and applying, implementing it. And now I currently work as a UX designer for a fintech company called Central One here. Yeah, that's
Okay.
basic gist.
Yeah, so you didn't hear wrong. He is actually from India, although Eric looks Chinese. Okay.
I am Chinese, but I was raised in India, so.
Okay, yes. All right, so how about Ryan?
Hi everyone, I'm Ryan. So as Elaine mentioned, right now I'm kind of like working on my own course at UX type, trying to help designers to find a job. But before all of this, I was working as product designer in different startups, mainly as a sole designer. So from that part of my career, I just learned a lot about how to do design in a stressful environment, and also learn a lot about how to find a job. That's why I can spend my past 2 years mentoring designers on different platforms, and now I'm just trying my best to help other designers to find their job.
Okay, awesome. So how long have you guys been in the UX industry? And is there a particular type of UX work you're doing? Like, because there are many different domain sectors, right, in UX. Can you tell us a little bit more? Going back to NITEC.
I'm trying to remember. So I've been designing for about 13 to 14 years now. Out of that, I would say like the UX part of it, maybe eight to 10 years. So at some point, I started initially with graphic and visual design, and then moved into UX design.
Got it. Okay. And is there a particular vertical or design domain that you focus on?
In terms of industries, um, I've mainly worked, I would say like with early stage startups, and more specifically, like the last one that I was working on as a designer at, that was a dev tools company, and a no code and dev tools company. So that was one of the industries I worked for quite a while in.
Right. Okay. How about Eric?
I've been designing for almost 4 years now. My first opportunity was actually at an early stage startup as an intern, but I was the only designer. So they also gave me the design lead role at a certain point. But so there, it was mostly, so the company was more into the volunteer section. So nonprofit, connecting nonprofits with for-profit companies, connecting them. It was like pretty diverse, but everything was based on the volunteer opportunity. So my role was how to engage with all three of them, all three of the audience together on one platform. That was my first role. My second role, which my current role, is UX design for this fintech company where we help service credit unions. So Van City, Prosperity Union, all their applications, we design those. So my specialty is right now in web application for banking, basically.
For banking. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. How about Ryan? Oh, we can't hear you.
I've got I was muted.
Yeah.
Like mentioned earlier, I was mainly worked in different early stage startups. And I worked kind of two different industries. One was in education, another one was in healthcare, and the I would say the only similarity between those two for me was I worked on some like management software for both industry. So it involves like internal tooling, manage appointments, things like that. But yeah, so different industry, kind of similar SaaS products.
Okay, great. So how long have you been in the UX industry?
Yeah, for me, I was about 5 years.
5 years. Okay, okay. So just so for the audience to relate to, because like you guys probably a few years ago you were maybe finding your first job, right? So describe to us like how you landed your first job for our audience. Nitek, you wanna start?
I would say that I guess I was reflecting on this question because in terms of my first job, like there's a few different definitions that I have for myself. Like for me, it was like, oh, when
UX
did I
job. UX job.
right? Like for
Yeah.
me, it was like, when did I first, get my first like design project that was, that was working with a customer or a client, or when was it that I got my first UX like internship or my first full-time job? So when I talk about a full-time UX job for me, I would say in Vancouver, I was still in university. I was looking for a part-time job to do outside of university. And I had basically emailed probably every single design agency I could find in all of Vancouver. It was that I think I remember sending out between 50 to 100 emails, just sharing my portfolio and asking for any sort of support that I could offer to their existing design team. And then out of those, I heard back from maybe 2 or 3 design agencies. Um, I, I went and had a chance to meet one of them, and that's the one that offered me a part-time role. So it was a very, very challenging funnel at the time because I was still in my first year at university. So when I was sending out emails, looking back, I was going through some of those emails as well. I realized, oh, some of the font sizes were wrong when I was reaching out, and I could tell that, oh, maybe they looked like spammy emails, and I'd make grammatical mistakes in that outreach. But I had a good portfolio with me at the time, and ultimately that's what helped me kind of prove that, okay, I can help you all as a design team, because I had a bunch of personal projects that I'd already done by then.
So when was this? Like which year was this when you had to send out 50 to 100 emails?
This was back in 2014. So this is my first year in university. Yeah.
Okay. So looking back, like what else would you do differently? Because I know many people actually do the same thing. They sit at home and send out 50 to 100 resumes.
Yeah. I would say, I guess like the one thing I'll clarify is I wrote personal emails to every single one of those agencies. So one thing that I've seen more recently, I know since there's a lot of jobs that are posted online, I've seen that most designers will click apply and then sit back and wait to hear. And most often, like that's very challenging even from a hiring manager's perspective for them to, because they get like 200 applicants for a role. So for them to go through every single application and as a job applicant to hope that you hear back is can be not so effective. And so one of the things I would recommend, and something that worked for me personally, is to write like personal emails to either the founders of the company you're applying to, the founders of the agencies, if that's the kind of work that you're applying for, but try to make that personal connection beyond just following the formal processes of applying for a job, etc. And I know that's what helped me even build connections, even if that didn't lead to a job. And many years later, like I'm still in touch with some of those people that replied to my first few emails.
So you're actually building a connection with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how would you first start to initiate the email? Like what do you say?
I specifically, I mean, I know I did write about, I've like drafted out an email template in one of the blogs I wrote out for like, this is exactly how I would write an email. But basically I would just, if I were looking for a job right now, I would introduce myself in a sentence and say, here's where I'm at personally. I would share some sort of proof of work, or, the things that I've been working on personally. I would offer maybe an idea or two if I can, in terms of what would be beneficial to the other person. And I would ask for, say, like a 10 to 15-minute coffee chat. And that's, that's a pretty small commitment for most people to reply and say yes to. So if you email 30 people, you might hear back from 10 of them. 5 of them might actually get on the phone with you, and then 3 of them will help, maybe end up helping you get that first job. So it's a bit of a process, but yeah, that's what I would write in my first email.
Yeah, that's good. So useful suggestion to just ask for a 10 to 15-minute coffee chat, right? Because I noticed that most people write, let me know if you're interested for stuff. then people don't reply, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't we switch things around a little bit? How about Ryan?
So my first job, I went to American University in Vancouver for interaction design. So that was my background. And my first job, fresh out of school, was at a marketing agency doing WordPress websites and some branding as well. I wouldn't call it a full-on UX design job, but that is my first full-time job. And how I got it, I felt pretty lucky for that one. I didn't have any connection back then, and I kind of just applying for different job posting online. And the agency's CEO or manager was pretty chill, I guess. Like they are fine with hiring a just fresh grads and to do work for them. So they kind of just wanted to give me a chance to try that. Or one thing I learned from that experience was it's really important to have a really good interviews, in the sense of that you had a casual conversation with the interviewer or the hiring manager, and you share a little bit about your personal life or your hobbies, and that somehow can make other person to like you, to want to work with you. And I think that really helped me to land the job, because we did talk about things like what books I read about, and it's 1984, and I somehow tied it back to my life in China, and my boss husband was working in China for a bit, and somehow that made some connection there. So yeah,
Very interesting insight. So it's not just about your portfolio or your formal resume. It's about building connections and, um, finding commonality in topic to talk about with the employer, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Eric.
My so the way I got my opportunities was also building connections, networking, and a sprinkle of little luck. So let's say, should I go with the first opportunity that I got as an
Yeah, I
intern?
heard the way you found your job is not through formal channel. You
Right.
never interviewed, right?
I mean,
Yes.
I
You
I interviewed on my current job, but
Right.
I'll touch on that. So first, my internship was actually through a friend. This was during university time. I was into the transition to entrepreneurship and also transferring out of that to UX design at the time. So I made a friend from my entrepreneurship course that we were hovering around each other. But he re-recognized me when I took the opportunity to teach fundamentals of UX at the university through a club, which was trying to teach UX in a way, and they needed an instructor, and that was also through a connection. So I happened to be their most viable choice to teach that. And then my friend found out that I was teaching it, and he also mentioned that they were looking for a UX designer for his startup that he's starting. I was like, I'm your guy, take me in. Even at that time, I was like I wanted to be involved in entrepreneurship, and I wanted to go through entrepreneurship through a UX angle, a design strategy angle. That's why I kept my eyes out, kept trying to connect with people who I heard were doing entrepreneurship in the university. So that's how I got my first opportunity as an intern there, or the design lead there. Now my current work job that I'm doing. So it's a whole big thing. While I was teaching during university, while I was still teaching, I taught for like a year, more than a year, for fundamentals of UX. While I was still working for that startup, I I recognize so many of my students from the fundamentals of UX came up to me and were like, "Hey Eric, I'm curious. I want to transition into this field. How do I build my portfolio? Where do I get materials for my case study?" And I'm like, "Oh, I really don't have much for you guys. You guys can either try replicating existing applications and make it better, or go to hackathons, which is still more towards designers. More towards developers. Try to design for them." That was my advice. But then I found out there's University of Washington. They did something called as design a protothon, which is like a design focused hackathon. And they invited me over to talk about it. After looking at that, I'm like, this is very cool. We need something like that in Vancouver. So did my research, found out that only other school that's doing in Canada is at University of Waterloo, which is still very closed off. It was their own, they only open it to their students. It's like, we need something here. So I hosted Canada's first open hackathon, design focused hackathon. And it was all online because COVID. So through there, I invited multiple judges from different industries. So one of the judges was a senior designer at the current company that I'm working at, and he seemed to notice my work. And timing just matched. He posted something on LinkedIn. I reached out. Oh yeah, you're that guy. Yeah, I like you. Let's set a call up. So we had a first interview, which was it was just like talking about what kind of person I am, looking at a little bit of my portfolio, which he already knew. The main thing that he was looking for was my work ethics and how I work, which he already saw by my dedication into the UX field through hosting that hackathon. So he didn't, that was like formality. The first interview was formality. Second interview was more testing. So he did like a whiteboard challenge with me. I came prepared and I aced that. And that's how I got my first official opportunity.
So
Yeah.
it sounds like he didn't even see your portfolio.
Nope. Basically, I'm not proud of it.
Okay, so it was your work ethic and your demonstration of you being to solve problems, right? And not necessarily even just the portfolio. He didn't
Yes,
see your
it
resume
was-
either, right?
No, I completely skipped all that. It
Yeah.
was it's mostly how I can collaborate and build things, which I did by demonstrating, by building the hackathon. So
So I think the hackathon allowed you to show the potential employee your potential.
yes, that was
Right.
not what I intended to do, but yeah, it somehow did.
Okay, well, that's a really good tip, for the other people that, hey, maybe it's not just like sending out resumes and portfolios, right? Yeah, and one thing that I noticed is after COVID, everybody's like at home on Zoom. It's not a very good way to build trust that way. You really have to be offline to meet people to build the trust, right? Like a coffee chat or something like that, right? Okay, so next question. What are some of the misconceptions you see in the UX industry when candidates try to land their first job, UX job? I'll just let any of you answer. We don't have to go in order. Because I think it's even just between IxDA and VDC, we've noticed a lot of junior people looking for jobs, and everybody's telling us they can't find a job, they can't find an internship. And then at the same time, a lot of the employers are looking for 3 to 5 years. So what's missing? What's the gap? You guys think?
One misconception I would like to point out is that, I hear a lot of friends of mine, oh, I got an interview, I got multiple, I'm step 1, step 2, step 3, and in the end they get rejected. Then they doubt their skills. Oh, maybe my resume is not good enough. Maybe my portfolio is not good enough. Sometimes it's not that. It's sometimes like the fit with the company is just different. You might be specialized in certain something, and the company is looking for a certain something else. Hence why you went through so many interviews, because you're good, but it's just that you're not the fit for the company, match for the company. That's one big misconception I hear.
Yeah, culture fit sometimes.
Culture, yes.
Okay. So it might not be your issue, or maybe the company ran out of budget, right? It's nothing to do with you either, right? How about the other two, Nitek and Orion?
I think maybe it's not a misconception, but I think one point some that people are forgetting about is the often see or learn different frameworks, different tactics to answer like behavioral questions, to do portfolio presentation, all that. They are always helpful, but at the same time, some people will just try their best to fit their answer into the framework rather than trying to give an authentic personal experience. Like sometimes they would use STAR framework to answer a behavioral question, and they will try their best to find a scenario and try to make it sound like it follow the STAR framework. Like you have a scenario and you take an action and you have results. But a lot of times people can't tell whether your answer is genuine or you are just try to stretch it out, so it sounds like a like typical STAR framework answer. So I think it's so important to keep the authentic during your interview. That's what people are looking for. They want to work with someone they are they want to work with people they are happy to work with. Like it's kind of like a vibe check. If they feel like you are just lying, or you are trying to hide something, or you're trying to show off, that it doesn't matter how much you are following the framework, it just won't work out.
So when you say framework, do you mean like oh, I did personas, I did user journey, I did wireframe kind of stuff, right? When you say framework.
Yeah, that could also be like that. My point is just any type of framework, like star framework for your behavior question, or like double diamond process for your portfolio. Sometimes your project just didn't never really follow the double diamond, but when you work on it, you don't really need to follow it if that's not how it happened. It's better to show what really happened rather than try to fit a standard.
So it's not like checkboxing. It's more like
Yeah.
telling an authentic story about what happened in the project, what parts you helped in there.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Nidek.
I'd say some of the misconceptions that I've seen, one is assuming that you need to prioritize quantity or over quality in your portfolio. So a lot of times I've seen, especially newer designers will try to add in 5, 6, 7 different projects in their portfolio to show, oh, like here's all the different things I've done. But as someone, yeah, I would say like what actually matters more is the quality of this project. So even if you have, let's say if you're just starting out into design and you have one project, it's, I would say that making that one project be really good quality is probably worth a lot more than trying to add 3 more projects that are not, high quality. Because when you put in, I think the quality of your portfolio often will come down to the quality of the project, that like whatever project is at the lowest quality, people will assume, oh, like this is the type of projects, or work I'm going to get from this person, versus if you have only 2 projects in your portfolio but they're both extremely high quality, then it gives a very different signal saying, okay, whatever work this person produces, I know it as someone who's hiring, it gives me a lot of confidence that, yeah, if all the work I'm seeing so far is high quality, imagine what this person could do if I bring them on. So I think that's one misconception. The other misconception is that you need some sort of degree or certificate, degree or certificate in order to apply for and to get UX design jobs, which honestly, I don't think is the case at all. Like I've reviewed over like 2,000 portfolios in the last few months, and never once have I looked at like, oh, what university is this person from, or like what kind of degree or certificate they have, because the portfolio speaks so much more about your quality of work than any sort of degree or certificate can. So I've seen in the chat that there's some people transitioning into design from other careers. Others are finishing up like boot camps and stuff. So no matter your background, don't feel like if you don't have a certain certificate saying, oh, you're ready to be a designer now, that you can't apply for and get your first design job. I think those are 2 misconceptions, I would say.
Yeah, I think UX industry is sort of like chefs, right? Like you can get a PhD in cooking, but if you can't cook a real dish that tastes good, it doesn't matter, right? Yeah. So I think that's what we mean. Like, it does not necessarily mean you have a certificate that means you're a good designer. The proof is in the pudding. You have to, the portfolio is your proof, right? Okay, awesome. And I've seen a lot of portfolios that goes, hello, my name is blah, so many. Like, what do you guys think of that? I don't know when that happened, but it seems to be a phenomena. And where do people know if they have high quality design? How would they even know? Because some of the like the cammers, they will compare themselves to their classmates, right? But how do they judge?
one of the things that I've recommended to people actually, and I know I can see that's also a question in the chat, is like, how do you define like quality of your work? It's I've found that the best way to improve the quality of work early on is to get feedback from other designers on it. So designers who are, let's say, a few years ahead of you, a couple of years ahead, because they're going to notice things about your work and your design that maybe as you're starting out that you may not. So one thing I've recommended is to reach out to designers either locally in your communities. It could be like through IxDA, through VDC. It can also be there's platforms like ADP List. And when you set up these calls, I've noticed that a lot of times people will ask for feedback on the portfolio overall, but very few designers that I speak to will actually ask for feedback on specific work. So instead of showing your entire portfolio, just show like one Figma screen, for example, that you've put together, and ask someone to critique that for you. So ask for a design critique and say, hey, I designed this like a mobile app homepage, for example. How would you improve it? And what is good about it, and what can be improved? And yeah, as you're talking, like with the internet, like things are so accessible, you can reach out to different types of designers and collect feedback from different people and iterate on the same project, versus if you've done a project in 3 weeks and you showcase it in your portfolio, you could spend another 3 weeks on your own, like refining that. But sometimes people kind of put a full stop to it, like, oh, I only worked on this for 3 weeks with my team during the duration of the boot camp or this program I was in, and then I stopped working on it. But you don't have to stop there. You can continuously improve your work. So that's how I would try and improve for qualities through design critiques, especially.
Okay, yeah. A question that we often hear is, especially for the new designers or junior designers, they're like, well, employers are looking for 3 to 5 years experience, but I don't have any work experience yet. Like, how do I build a portfolio, without that? Like, without the real working experience? What would you guys say for advice?
Currently, sorry,
How to get experience without working experience? That's the question.
Ryan, you can go ahead first.
Yeah, okay, sure. So I actually recently made a post about this on this exact topic.
Great.
So basically, I will just try to summarize it. Basically, there's like I talk about 6 different ways. First, you can leverage your close network. Ask your friend, family if they need a new website or something. You can work for them. Apply for volunteer jobs. There are a lot of volunteer job boards out there, and you can look for any UX related jobs for you. So you can work with other people, not just work by yourself. That's always plus. And try to team up with other people. Try to build some project together. Like go on websites like indie hackers. I think that's what it's called. Indie hackers and some different communities. Try to find people who might want to build a project together. Another way to do it is contribute to open source software. There are tons of open source software, and a lot of them definitely needs design help. So if you can find them and just try to offer your help, I think a lot of open source software maintainer would be happy to take you in. And the last thing is what Natek did is just reach out to local startup, local design agency, and try to see if they need any help, and try to negotiate a contract on that.
Eric?
Those are really great points, Ryan. agreed with all of them, especially in iTech as well. To me, like the whole point of a portfolio is to show that once you're given a project, the whole case study and project, you need to be able to deliver in a sense that deliver in their client's point of view. What did the client want? What were they trying to achieve? And have your work helped in achieving that in some degree or form? Have basically that having that guidance, that feedback that Nitik was talking about. If you get into projects or like case studies where you constantly get feedback from like somebody experienced, maybe could be the client, could be an experienced designer or whatever. As long as you can show that it's been you had that back and forth with them in your portfolio, I think that's what matters the most. So you can go through that by doing everything that Ryan and I think mentioned. And there's also more and more design focused hackathons now, or design challenges, or Iterate UX is doing UX challenges, and like I hear other people on LinkedIn also doing a lot of putting out a lot of UX design challenges where they actually give live feedback to your work as a client and as a designer. So that is huge. I feel like there's much more resources now than when we were trying to get in. Good at that.
I think you have something to talk about on this point.
No, not on this point specifically.
Okay, great. So, do you guys hire designers like, in the past? Yeah, and what would you look for when you hire a designer? What are their key traits or, characteristics?
For me, the role I was hiring was a senior designer, so it might not be applicable to junior people. But I think things to look for is, even for junior designer at the current job market, your visual design skill is really important. I know some of you might just want to be a UX designer, but companies really look for someone who can provide a finished product or finish the design. So if your visual skill is not there yet, that's something you definitely want to improve on. And another thing in general is just how you talk about the design, how you talk about your design decision. You didn't do a certain design decision just because it's a good practice, or that's how big company does it. You actually have a reason for it. Maybe it's because you did your user research and you learned certain insights, and then you did the design based on insights, and after that you did the testing to make sure that's actually useful. So you need to be able to show your thought process of how you come to the design decisions. So I think for junior people, that's really important.
Okay, Erica.
Yes. Hiring designers. So especially junior designers. My company was hiring a junior UX designer almost early this year, or end of last year. And so when my boss put that up and asked me to like help promote that too, I posted on my community, Vancouver Design Check-in, and I posted on my LinkedIn. I had 50 people reach out to me asking more about it, out of which very few of most of them they just like, oh, hey, I'm curious about I'm looking for a job. how is it like? I gave a very standard surface level answer at the time because they were asking very general question. And then, oh, okay, thank you. That was the response from most of the people that reached out to me. But then there were also few that were like, oh, okay, getting more curious. How's it like? How's the fit? How's the culture? They showed interest and curiosity. They felt like they wanted to really interested in like if that company is fit for them, rather than I'm trying to get in with the person working there, so that they might refer me, you know. So there's only like a few of them that actually stood out. So I had like 7 people I actually stood out to me. They were from my community. They were designers I personally knew, or they were really interested. We had a lot of back and forth on LinkedIn conversation. And when I referred those 7 people to my company, out of which, so I was talking to HR person and told her like, oh yeah, how many people applied? She said there was 100 people applied. And then who were the 7 I wanted to refer? I was like, okay, here are the 7 I referred. But just so you know, if you do find other people within that 100 outside of the 7 people who might be capable for the job, please do consider them. Yeah, I will, no problem. But later I found out she only considered the 7 I referred. So that was another, that was another point that you really need to stand out that way and have back and forth connection. And out of the 7, the ones that were top 2, top 3, they either had a background in the industry already they were transitioning from maybe another job. So one of them was actually, was at bank teller. So she had knowledge about the financial industry already. So she was transitioning to UX. So she was like top 3 candidate. And the top 2 candidate had visual design skills, better visual design skills, like Ryan mentioned. And we selected the one with a little bit more experience with actual clients, dealing with clients. So that like, her collaboration we knew was more, much better than the other one who was more hypothetical situations, case studies. So yeah, hopefully that story helped.
Yeah, so actually maybe leveraging your existing background, like you said, the bank teller background is suitable for your company, which is more in credit union, right? It would be a good fit, right? Yeah. So how about my take? My take?
Yeah, in terms of what I would when I'm hiring designers, and this is like every day, that's what I'm focusing on right now. So one of the things that I've, especially with designers that are breaking into the field, I look for is side projects, actually. Side projects and initiatives that they're taking up outside of when they're in a structured environment. So for example, if someone's done a UX design degree, if someone's done a UX design boot camp, etc., all of that is good. But what I'm looking for is outside of that time, were you excited about design that you actually ended up doing something on the side, whether you're writing about it, whether you're hosting meetups? Like in Eric's case, for example, when he was at the hackathon, and if I was one of the people there looking to hire someone, I would also be like, hey, like Eric is doing this on his own free time outside of university. Like no one told him to organize a hackathon or go out of his way to bring the UX community together, but he's so excited about this that he actually spent his free time to help people in UX, or to help put to take the initiative and to start something on his own. So I feel like that quality is actually a really good indicator that someone is excited about doing this, not just because they have a degree in it or because they want to get a job in it, but because they actually like what they're doing. And so side projects and initiative is one, but that can also take different forms. It can be it can be as something as simple as writing about your own UX journey. It can be like documenting how you're making progress from day to day, week to week. It can be personal projects that you take up. It can be prompts that you're answering online. It can be redesigns of your favorite application. Like there's just so many ways to do things. basically I'm looking for like, if no one's telling you what to do in design, do you end up doing something in design? And that to me has been it is usually a very strong indicator.
So you're looking for people with passion in design, sounds like.
And I think initiative is the big thing, because
Initiative.
I mean, every portfolio you see, people are going to write, right, that they're passionate about design, but I want to see how you actually apply that and what does that result in.
Right. Okay. Okay. So what about okay, a question of okay, so in the current market, I think people feel, oh, there's a lot of companies not hiring, firing, recession. Well, what's your advice for people just getting into the industry?
I think one, again, I was just reflecting on this before joining the talk today, is especially in this market, I know a lot of people, even in the comments here, I know some folks have mentioned that they've done a lot of outreach, they're not hearing back from companies. I think the biggest thing I would share is don't, because it is a difficult job market, there's fewer design roles than usual right now. It's more competitive and there's more people looking for work. So all of that compounds, and that's why you're hearing back from fewer companies. If I were in this shoe, obviously it's challenging, but one thing that I would recommend is don't wait for like getting a job, getting an internship is almost like a bit of a permission to say, okay, now you can do the design work, like we've hired you, now you can start doing design. Whereas like I would say, try to break out of that requirement to say like, can I do the work even if I don't officially have a job letter, right? So for example, can I continue to improve my skills? Can I continue to practice in Figma? Like, use whatever time you can. A lot of times, like in the job search, I've seen people spend like 90% of their time applying to different jobs and then 10% maybe trying to improve at Figma. And I would flip that, especially if you're a new designer, like you want to focus as much time as you can on your skills, because it's counterintuitive, but like the more time you spend on your skills, the more and better success you're going to have with the job offers and with the job applications that you do. So in this environment, I would say like use the time that you have to take up projects, to do those side projects, to improve your skills and to get the reps in. Because once things start picking up again, or when you do find that next opportunity, you'll be able to say, hey, even though it's been a rough market in the last 6 months, for example, like I've done these 5 projects in that time period. Here's all the things I've improved on without waiting for permission from anyone else to say, okay, you're ready to be a designer now.
So it never hurts to sharpen your saw, right? Like just be a better cook, right? To be a better cook, then you get the job.
Cook,
right?
cook every day,
Yeah, cook, practice, practice
Yeah.
more. How about Ryan or Eric?
Yeah, I add on to what Natix said. This is a story I heard maybe about 3 years ago. So definitely not during pandemic, but what this person did was he built a Webflow website, really creative Webflow website, talking about why Webflow should hire him as their intern. I don't remember the exact detail, but it's something along the line, and then he just got the internship from Webflow. So my point is, you just kind of have to do something creative, or you have to start doing things. You can't just do the traditional applying online, all that, and hopefully one day job will come to you. You have to find ways to find all those jobs. So try to build some project is good, or then just try to reach out to different people, not just designers. I think sometimes it's easy for designer to find designers, but if you really want to find a job, you have to find like CEOs for startups, or even like marketing people, or in a certain company it might be like a community building person. Yeah, so you have to reach to more people, and hopefully one of the connection you made can help you land a job.
Right. Well, community building people, Eric. Reach out to Eric.
I heard like Ryan and I think too, they both have their communities and all that. I
Yeah.
100% agree with everything that Nitik and Ryan said. Like just like they build on my 2 points that actually my first point was gonna be about building, hustling, and find your own job rather than have the job presented to you. So like Ryan mentioned, showing that, taking that initiative, reaching out to people who might are trying to do something, and try to convince them to involve you in it. Find your own opportunity, build your own opportunity, maybe do your own startup, or if you see a problem that needs work, try to solve it, and then put it out there. That's my first. Second, increase your visibility. So show up, show up in person, or like show up on social media. I don't LinkedIn people during the pandemic, I saw a lot of people building their online profiles on LinkedIn, YouTube, have YouTube channels, and already they were trying to take the initiative to increase their visibility. Now after the pandemic, we have people showing up to those community events, my events, VDC, IxDA. People they don't even have to talk much. They just keep showing up their face in a way that they're supporting the cause, and then they get noticed. Hey, what are you doing? What are you here for? Okay, yeah, that's very cool. Let me try helping you connect with somebody. I'll direct you to the right person. Or even go to like community meetups where employers are usually there. So startup founders, entrepreneurs, people at high level where recruiters are there, like keep showing up to those, keep increasing visibility, and yeah, that's the way to stand out. That's the only way I see people who get jobs these days are just doing these two. They don't.
Yeah, people, I've actually heard from recruiters now, employers can't even tell if you wrote your own resume. Is it ChatGPT AI writing your resume? So they're like, I don't know how good you are, right? But if you show up in person and they know you as a physical person, build relationships, then it's more likely they will give you a chance. Eric, I think you mentioned a really key word is you need to convince the other person to hire you. Sometimes I think a lot of junior designers, they reach out and say, hi, I went to you, man, nice to meet you, full stop. And then I'm like, well, were you gonna ask a question? Right? Yeah, there was no follow-up, right? And yeah, so that conversation needs to continue, right? Great. Okay. Well, so we're like on the dot for an hour. Maybe we'll open it up to the floor. Jasmine, you want to pick some questions to see what people have? Yeah.
I think the first one was from Megan. If you'd like to ask your own question, or I could also read out your question.
Yeah, if you're here, you can open your window, your Zoom, so
Yeah.
so we can recognize you.
No, I think I think Natik actually answered my question at the end. I was asking about what will be a good portfolio, like how many case studies should you have, but he kind of covered that already, so I'm okay with regards to that question. Thank you.
Yeah, I really recommend you guys to like open your camera, because like if senior designers recognize your face, you get a better chance of landing a job, right? Or being referred. So
yeah, if I see the faces here and show up at my events, yeah, oh, you're that person, right?
Yeah, and a lot of people don't open the cameras on Zoom events. Okay.
Also, just add on to that. Like if you want to add any of us on LinkedIn, just send a quick note. Like you heard about us, you attend the event or whatever. Otherwise, we don't really know who. We can't remember all the people who attend the event. We might just ignore you, and you might feel bad about it. But yeah.
Jasmine, who's next?
Sean.
Anybody has a question? I think like we have been replying to questions already on the chat quite actively. So I feel like if anybody has a question, may as well just ask now. Like
Okay,
unmute your
Rajat
hand.
has his hands up.
Or yeah.
Rajat, you wanna
Oh.
say something?
Hey, hi. I have a question. Is the I
Oh, you're breaking up. Can't hear you properly.
no?
Very slow. Oh, do you want to type your question? We can help you ask it.
Yeah.
It's
Meanwhile,
very
anybody
choppy.
else can raise their hand for the next question.
Yeah, Rajat, maybe type your question because the internet's not very choppy. All right, who else? Okay,
I think-
Rajat says, is the quality of ideas that you are solving for important? Any of the speakers want to answer that? Quality of ideas. Can you elaborate? What do you mean? Rajat. Rajat. Essentially, if you're picking up a problem in healthcare, what do you mean by that? You mean if the is it the quality of the project or the solution? Does it need to be quiet throughout the solution approach? Not really understanding that. Well, maybe we can come back. Does it have to be quite exhaustive throughout the solution approach?
I can try to answer it.
Okay.
I think it would be definitely better if your solution really exhaustive, really comprehensive. Then you have things to talk about. And at the same time, if the problem you are trying to solve is like there were definitely times where I saw some case studies and they are trying to solve a certain problem that are just too common or too I can't find the right words, but like sometimes it's hard to provide a really good, really thoughtful solution to a certain problem. It can be quite boring, for sure. Like for example, one person I recently met and he did sort of a case study on adding a feature in the Nike app to help people tell how to use certain machine in the gym. Yeah, I think overall it's like not necessarily a bad problem to solve, but then your solution might be so simple that there's just not much to talk about in your process and not much to talk about how you solve the problem. It's not that you are doing a bad job at it. Like sometimes it's your scope of your problem matters to a certain degree. But then if you just want to find a really niche problem but you did really well on the design and you have tons of things to talk about, then maybe that's not a huge issue. So I guess my point is it's more on how you talk about your process, less on the exact scope of the certain problem.
So it's something
So-
like if it's eye-catching or interesting, right? At least like eye-stopper kind of projects. Right?
Just building on top of what Ryan mentioned about the scope, I think one of the factors about a good idea is you got to go back to the problem. How clear is the problem? How clearly defined? Because usually when you get a problem, it's not usually defined. You got to go and ask questions more and more. If you can define the problem well, define the scope very well, and then find the right solution, I feel like that's more important in terms of quality than than a very complex, fancy solution. No.
Okay, great. We have other hands up.
Maybe Sean can go first because he was about to ask his question.
Hi, sorry, let me just turn on my video. Hi,
Oh,
everyone.
we see your face. Good.
Hey, well, I'm just gonna read it, because I just wrote it in the chat. Thanks for being open, first of all, for like and sharing your experiences and like helping the community out to like find jobs that they really want to be in the industry. Well, my question is, how important is it to have a degree in UX or HCI field to find a job in the industry right now? Or is it more important to have really great portfolio if it is necessary? What kind of degree or program do you recommend? I know this is a lot of question, but just for as a background, I have an interdisciplinary art degree, and as a person from the marginal community, there are financial barriers to achieving further education. So I would like to know what are some recommendations for those who have barriers like myself. And I know some of you already like said hackathons and some of the other design challenges. I kind of am looking at different things like Forage and other sources to do design challenges, but I just don't know how important that is, or how effective it is in helping myself to find job in the industry. Or so I guess like in short, like what makes a person stick out from other candidates if they're making a career change to the industry. Thank you.
I would ask, what do you think a degree signifies to a recruiter or an employer?
Are you asking me?
Yes, anybody, yes, you and anybody else.
I mean, I'm sure like it's a lot about like what you have learned, so that you can apply to the work that you'll be doing. And you know, there are so many resources out there to learn from, different designers and different people from different backgrounds.
If
or
it was just about the stuff that you would learn,
No.
anybody can learn that on the internet now, right? Like everybody can learn anything on a degree or university online. But what does having a degree separates them? Exactly, this is for everybody. Anyway, my personal opinion is like a person who has a degree, just kind of to an employer and recruiter, it's like the person is kind of like stamped but is trusted, or had this guidance. The work that they did is looked over by certain people and is recognized in certain way. That's more official. So they probably followed the proper work ethics or the proper way to do a project or something like that, structured. So to me, like it's just like a stamp to say that, oh, they followed the right process, they know the right things to get here. But if you can do the same, if you can show that you went through the right process, you know your stuff through other ways without showing that you have a degree, I feel like there's almost no difference between a person who has a degree versus somebody who don't. yes, high level Microsoft, like I see UX researchers, they usually require master's degree and all that. But do they really though? I see a lot of people still apply for those jobs and still get them. Maybe it's a question we gotta look in a different perspective.
Yeah, I think previously we mentioned about the analogy of a chef, right? Like if you want to be a chef, going to cooking school is one way, but maybe another way is you can beg Gordon Ramsay to teach you how to cook well, right? That's also another way. Maybe have some senior designers help you as well, right? But you also have to think why the senior designers should help you. Like what value are you bringing to them for them to help you, right? Okay, how about Ryan or
I wanted to pitch in real quick. Yeah, I have a very strong opinion on this one, as I would say it's absolutely not necessary to have a degree or any sort of certificate in any way to get UX design roles. And I'm saying this especially because when I first started in design, I was I didn't have any sort of like formal certifications. I started off as a self-taught designer, and I feel like it's possible for anyone, especially with the resources available right now. Like the tools are very accessible. There's a lot of free and accessible content online. I know Ryan's also been posting a lot of resources on LinkedIn, for example. But yeah, it's like everything that you need to be a product designer in companies today is available to you online. And the biggest thing that you can do to get there, I know there's possibly this feeling of like, oh, I don't have a design degree, and there's probably 50 other applicants that apply that have a design degree. But honestly, that's not the same perspective that employers take. So the employers are not like, okay, here's the 50 people with degrees and here's like 10 without. It's more like we have 60 portfolios in total. Let's sift through and see which ones are high quality. Like in the last, again, like in the last 2000 portfolios I've seen, I have no idea which ones had a degree and which ones did not, because I would mainly look through their story, the types of projects they've done. If you're switching into design from a different career, that's actually a strength. It's not a fact that, oh, I started off, let's say, in architecture and now I'm moving into design. You can actually use it as a strength to say that I started off in architecture, so I've developed certain types of thinking and certain skills that I'm good at, and now I'm applying that to a new field, which is design. So there's whatever story that you have as an individual is your strength. So try to lean into that. Don't feel like degrees are a blocker, because they're definitely not. Even if I think there's a lot of boot camps out there that might make it feel like, oh, you need to know all these things and here's a list of things we'll teach you. I can guarantee you can learn all of it on your own. It may be more challenging, but you're going through that growth and learning in order to get to a design job. So anyway, that's my strong opinion there, is you don't need one.
Right?
Yeah, I will just keep it short. No, and it didn't help me that much either. But well, if you went, I don't want to make sound like if it was school was complete waste of time. It wasn't, but it's just not something you have to do.
Okay, we have a lot of hands up. Jasmine.
Anne could go.
Hi. My question would be, I have some experience now of listening to a lot of people's advice, and they're all true. My personal difficulty in improving my portfolio is, how do I make it so that people want to read it? Like, how do I do a good UX on my own website and do a good storytelling? Because I've seen senior UX designer portfolios, anywhere from like junior. I've looked a lot, but the piece that I find is missing is like, how do I show it to someone that this is mine, and eventually like show that I am confident in like my portfolio. So yeah, that's my question. The storytelling aspect, and for example, like I'm not a very expert in UI, so I'm more interested in UX research. So that might mean that I don't have the nicest looking website. I have tweaked my portfolio a couple of times now. But yeah, how would I make it so that people actually want to read it instead of just scrolling through stuff that looks the same from all the other candidates, for example?
Can I go first with this one? My personal opinion on that one is storytelling. Great storytelling is like showing artifacts, showing images, showing our artifacts in a organized structure or manner that's familiar. Because yeah, pictures, they tell 1,000 words, 100,000 words, and people are too lazy to read, to go through each and every word to understand the detail. So I think pictures are amazing. Showing pictures of your artifact in that structured order is great. That's it.
And also employers sometimes don't have a lot of time, right? They might just kind of skim through. If something catches the eye, then they'll dive into it more. But if it's just text, and nothing special or stands out, then they might not spend more time, right? How about Ryan?
Yeah, if you don't, if you are not confident about your UI skill, definitely you can learn. Like UI skill is probably one of easier skill to learn on your own without working with someone, without real work experience. But if you don't want to spend the time now, my suggestion is just buy a really good template. Usually like for Webflow or Framer, and then put your content, try to follow the template as much as possible, and if you really need, make some customization on that. But yeah, a really good template is usually enough. And like Eric mentioned, use more visuals, not just your final design, but you can also add like icons, add diagrams, and to keep things short, you can also use more bullet points rather than long paragraphs. And also don't worry too much about the length of your case study, because sometimes if you just worked on a lot of things and you have so much to talk about, you'd rather want to talk about all the important detail rather than just cut down a lot of things and in order to make it short. Because if people just skim through, sometimes length is not a huge factor. It's more about how you present your case study. So keep all the important detail in and try to make it easy to read.
No, nothing to add there.
Other hands.
Next one could be Ryan.
Hey guys,
Hello.
I'll turn on my camera now so you get a look at me. Hey, so thanks all for coming here and talking about it. It's been a great little meetup. And I do have a question. I stuck it in the chat so I don't forget it by the time you guys get to me. So let me just quickly scroll through it. I'll tell you what I asked. So the question was, this is for the panel, so anybody who wants to snap at it, please go right ahead. So the way I've kind of been, so I'm not a UX designer yet. I've designed in pretty much every other type of design. I'm industrial designer, graphic designer, art director, and advertising. And for me, sort of like the common skill through all those different disciplines is my sort of creativity and design thinking. So it's basically like my problem solver. And UX is kind of another avenue I want to kind of start to push into and see if I like that. And I think I might actually. And so what I've been doing for my portfolio is I kind of been like, rather than just saying like, here's some work that I did, it looks good, like I kind of actually do them as sort of almost like long form process presentations. So I want to show them like the problem, the brief or the problem space, and then I let the person kind of scroll down through it and see like how I came to my solution. And the idea is to help so I want people to see not just, like my design quality, but also like how my thinking works, to see how I got from like, here's the problem or here's the opportunity, and here's why I made this decision, that decision to solve it. And so, as people here, people who have, seen a lot of resumes and applications, have you seen anything like that before? And if you have, like, how's that, succeeded or not succeeded? That's kind of what I want to know about. Thanks.
Oh, thanks for the question, Ryan. I would say that overall, most UX portfolios I've seen roughly like follow the same, like a similar breakdown where like, here's a problem in a summary. Here's how I initiated some sort of research, a few solutions that I explored. If you did any sort of like testing and prototyping as part of it, you can share that. And then you finally wrap up with the end result. So usually that's the structure I've seen work at all kinds of design roles, but also at every level, whether you're a new designer or whether you're someone already with experience coming into the field. And so, yeah, I think it's really good that you have experience in some of the other types of design, because you can use that to inform the case studies you make on the UX side of things. And the way you tell a story about the project, how you went about it, like that's going to shine through no matter like whether you play around with the structure. Like the story itself is going to hopefully still come through. So I think and it's fine, like even though most people follow that structure, I think that's fine. One note that I'll share is where it gets challenging is if it feels too much of a cookie cutter approach, right? So this is something I've seen a lot on especially like bootcamp portfolios, for example, where every single project, for example, goes through that specific structure, and you can see that there's like specific sections, etc. And I think it can feel a bit too cookie cutter if you're not adding your own voice and personalizing it to speak to a project as you would to a friend. And so one thing that could be helpful is to just sit with a friend, maybe someone who's not a designer, and record yourself as you're explaining your project to them, and then transfer that into a case study, because it's more natural to talk to someone about it and then review it and put that into written form, versus trying to follow a very cookie cutter approach using specific keywords. And I think at that point, as someone who's on the hiring side, like I can tell if something's orchestrated and stuffed with keywords versus if something actually has value in the type of language and storytelling that's happening within the case study.
One thing to add on that, like for certain project, you might just exactly follow the cookie cutter process, and that's fine. But the thing about that is there will always be challenges you encountered, or problem or mistakes you made during that process, and you want to mention that in your case study. Don't make something like everything's perfect and you just kind of everything just follows through, run smoothly, and you want to talk about those mistakes, challenges, or like the or even like problems you encountered with communicating with PMs, engineers, whatever. Like those conflicts are always nice to add in. So even though you might still follow a certain standard process, but it sounds more real or more personalized.
Eric?
No, nothing from
All right, well, we have 5 more minutes. Why don't we quickly go through the others?
Yep, Kane.
Hi. I was just wondering some good ways or resources to find out about emerging startup companies or ones that are already around looking for people, because I don't feel like I've came across any or seen any. Maybe I just haven't been keeping my eye out, but yeah, I just thought it'd be good to ask.
Feel like a lot, more than 50% of the jobs that are available are not online. They're not offered. Feel like you need to contact the people themselves and ask around to find if they have actually positions available. Maybe actually reaching out to people, that might be a thing.
Yeah, maybe go to startup events, right? Not design events. Go to, you know, there are many, go to Meetup and look for startup events. Or even remotely, right?
Yeah. Or just stalk people on Twitter. Like follow people on Twitter, and Twitter people love post new products, new startups, and also check out product hunt. I think a lot of designers don't really use that website. It's just really cool to see what other people are building. Well, technically, if they already launched on product hunt, they might already have a designer, but they might be expanding after a really successful launch. So definitely to reach out to them through there.
What was it called? Sorry.
It's all in the chat. All the links are
Okay,
in the chat.
cheers. Thank you.
And then one thing I'll add there, to similar to what Eric shared, is a lot of, you can kind of reverse, instead of looking out for like places where you can find design jobs, you can reverse the process to say, where can I find cool companies that I look up to, that I admire, and then reach out to them to see how can I help them on the design side. So one thing that helped me when I was looking for my first job is I wrote like top 30 design agencies in Vancouver, for example. And then I went through each of them, looked at the type of work they did, and then I crafted a personal email saying, hey, I noticed y'all work, let's say, in healthcare projects. I would love to help with XYZ because I think it relates to healthcare projects. And so you can start from companies first, look for like top, if there's a specific industry you're excited about, let's say it's climate, you can say, okay, top climate tech companies in British Columbia, and then reach out to the founders of those companies and say, hey, I'm a designer, like this is where I can help, is there anything I can take off your plate on the design front? So it's pretty surprising like how many people that are looking for jobs don't end up sending personalized emails like this, because everyone's looking for the easy answer to just hit the apply button on LinkedIn. But when everyone does that, then it's hard to stand out. So when you do take that extra step to do the research on the website and craft a personal email and send them an email, even if they don't have a design job, you're going to be like one of 5 designers, that might have reached out to them, for example.
Sounds good. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, maybe one
Excellent.
more question we have time for.
Okay, Iran then.
Hi, so my question is about networking, and I've seen a lot of advice about reaching out to people, and I always feel bad because I feel like I'm asking for favors from strangers, and I've seen one advice that said you can bring value to them, like support them in some way, like if you can provide benefit to them first. And I wanted to hear your thoughts about like how we could provide value to people that we want to reach out.
Can't. There's a
Can't?
very low chance of you providing value to them for the first time. But just like showing up to events frequently, like for example, for my community, when I host events, if you just show up, you're already providing me value. Just showing up itself is like big to me. So I would like maybe reach out and talk to you and like connect with you with particular people. that would be for me. But if you're trying to reach out to other senior recruiters or somebody, what I've seen that works is like, hey, I'm trying to do like a YouTube thing, I'm trying to do a podcast thing. Would you be interested in talking there, That I have seen success there too. But that is if you want to start a podcast or a YouTube or something. Otherwise, there's very low chance of you actually having that. Just making the connection itself, making them empathize with you. And then, like, for example, if I find somebody from India and got a job here, I'm like, hey, I'm from same, or somebody went to the same college or university. Hey, we're the same, I'm trying to follow your journey. I really look up to you. Is there a possible where you can help me with this? I think empathy is huge on that front.
And add on that, yeah, then there's low chance you can actually provide any good value. But the basic thing you can do, or the minimum thing you can do, is try to respect other people's time. So whenever you reach out, you need to have clear ask, like what kind of feedback you are looking for, what question you want to ask. And about question, like maybe sometimes you just don't know, and sometimes you want to ask some general question. Maybe that's okay, but if it would be a lot better if your question are specific to your situation, rather than just something you can get answer through 1 minute Google search. And after you had first interaction, and you might add another people, add the person on LinkedIn, and then you can learn about or during your meeting you learn about what they like, what's their interests, and you see some articles or you see some product that might be interesting to them. You can send that over. Like, it's not a huge thing, but it's just a nice gesture to do.
Isaac, want to wrap up?
Thank you.
I'm trying to think ways to help. So I guess like one example that could be helpful, especially for like smaller companies and startups, for example, if you see a web page for a startup, and you feel like, okay, this web page could be better, and you want to reach out to the founder saying, hey, I like what you're doing, I want to support your work on the design side. If you take a screenshot of one part of their website and fix it up in Figma with your suggestions or something, and say, hey, I noticed that this section of your website wasn't clear enough, so I did this quick iteration if you want to take a look. Even small things like that can go a long way. Like when I was interviewing a few years ago, I reached out to the CEO of Webflow, who at the time, was pretty big, like very famous because of all the attention they were getting as a company. And I was like, okay, I want to email the CEO, but what value can I add to him as someone who's not on the inside? And I ended up brainstorming like 3 ways that I think they could grow their own product, because I was a Webflow user. So I spent time on their product. I brainstormed, okay, like here's 3 things that they're not doing. And in that email, I said, hey, here's 3 ideas that you may or may not have considered. Hopefully that helps. And that directly landed me an interview with their company. Like I think it took me probably a couple of hours to write that one email, where I could have applied to like 20 other jobs, but like having spent all my energy into that one email actually resulted in that one interview that I wanted. So that's an example of like small things you can do to to just stand out in the quality of questions you ask, in the way that you leverage the skills that you have right now, just to help someone from a design perspective.
Thank you
Okay,
so much.
so I know this we're
Sorry, one last quick
okay,
point on
sure,
that.
sure.
On
Okay.
that. Sorry. Yeah, when you reach out to people and you are offering help, try not to make sound like you are, you are really, you do want to sound like you are professional, but don't sound like you are, you have big ego and I'm really helping you. You should take my work, take all that. So be generous and be, I can't think of the right word, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, don't offend the hirer, right? Okay. All right, so we're out of time, and well, maybe the speakers can write their contact or LinkedIn, whatever. Like if there are a few more hands sticking up, they want to contact me directly to ask the remaining questions. And yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for attending. And yeah, you have the IxDA and VDC contacts here as well to stay in touch, right? All right, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you,
you so
Eric,
much.
Ryan, and Nike.
Bye.
Okay,
Thanks,
bye.
everyone.
everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.